What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode, Conspiracy or Just a Coincidence. I am Jack Allen. Today we have a super special guest. Chris Cuomo will be stopping in after his recent departure from CNN. Obviously, that's my attempt at a humor as I check my profile to make sure we're live. And hopefully everyone can hear me. Let me just pin this to my profile here. We got an awesome episode today. And dude, it's going to be, I think I'm gonna have to do it in 3 parts because it's that much notes. My notes are 16 pages and we're going to have to get like right into it because I'm like good for like an hour and 15 minutes. And then after that, my energy level drops significantly. So we're going to get right into it. So if anybody wants to check out the book, it's called Program to Kill by David Mcgowan. And I did his book on the hippies and the counterculture movement, how that was all CIA op. But definitely check out David. I think he passed away, but he has a great website, dude. Such an amazing researcher. And this book was out in like 2004 or 5. So some of the stuff, things have kind of made change. Like he talked about Manson, and that's next episode. But I read another Manson book, which had more information out than what was like available to David Mcgowan, but the general consensus is still the same. And also what I find so crazy is that, is that all of these shows, they always like blend right in with whatever we're like talking or whatever is kind of like going on in the news. So this is, we all know about the Ghislaine case that's going on right now. And that's what this podcast is like totally about. So it's just so synchronistic. And maybe it's just because I'm looking for those synchronicities, but yeah, so it's a great show. So first of all, this is going to be about MKu1tr4. I'm trying to like use code words because I saw YouTube's like strike. This could be the episode that we get knocked off on. This could be it. We're going to be on Odyssey regardless, but this could be it for us. But so this book, after the whole letter that shall not be named, I stepped away from a lot of this cabal and schmack thing because it almost like ruined it for me. It made me like question, like, I know this goes on. Obviously there's a court killer, he killed himself or whatever. He didn't kill himself, the guy that shall not be named. But after that whole thing, I like took a step away. But this book just brought back how prevalent this is. And it is truly amazing. So the letter that shall not be named, obviously we can all kind of admit it was a psyop of some sort. But it's interesting that it even pushed me away, right? So imagine like normal people. So now if you would bring this stuff up, or we're going to talk about like little ones and what you get stuck in at 5 o'clock, the normal people will be like, oh no, that sounds like the letter, that sounds ridiculous, all those things like that. But this book and this shows, I think I'm going to do 3 of them, is going to break it down. And I know a lot of you guys, you know this is real, but this is going to break down so you could like prove to people or just better be equipped when you want to tell people these things. So first of all, mind control, right? Science fiction. It's not real. And we all know MKu1tr and it came out in the Church Committee and all those other court, where the CIA got caught and destroyed 90% of their documents. But this is not a pseudoscience, okay? The basic methodology was written by this guy, George Estabrooks. He's this prominent psychologist and hypnotist, works under contract with American intelligence. He publishes a book in 1943, Hypnotism. And he came up with evidence that everyone can be controlled, but different degrees, known as dissociative states. And I want to say this, when I was in high school, I went to a very large high school. So we had like a post-prom, right? Because someone died like the year before from drinking or whatever. And so they wanted to keep you at the school. So they brought a hypnotist to our school and he was like $40,000. You fly him out. And I, quote unquote, got hypnotized. I didn't get hypnotized. And this guy, clearly, this is a stage act. Like these people that, do these performances. Like I was one of the main acts because what they do is they look for people in the audience that are willing to do what he says. Like he made me, quote unquote, forget my name. And he has the microphone. He says, and your name is, don't say your name. And so I didn't say my name. So when he's like when these people do these acts, they're looking for people that are willing to act along. And obviously I'm a high school kid, you're self-conscious. So now I'm up here, like I can't not be hypnotized. I think everyone else is hypnotized. And it's like this group thing. This stuff is not the same. This is real stuff. And this George Estabrooks talked about how it's different levels for different people. And I talked about in another episode, Jose Delgado, and he worked, of course, for the greatest company in the world, the CIA. And Jose was in charge of controlling bulls with brain implants and frequencies. And eventually he wouldn't even have to put the thing in the brain. He could control a bull, like to go, to stop, to turn, all with frequencies of vibrations. And I know this sounds crazy. It sounds insane, not to you guys, but to anyone maybe just stopping in and new to the truther world or whatever you want to call it. But he did it, dude. You can look up Jose Delgado, and he was able to do, and it wasn't just him. There's all these guys, Donald Bain, Walter Howard or Ballard, Peter Howard, all these people, and they all wrote books like Operation Mind Control, Physical Control of the Mind. Real nice summer reads that you'd probably want to read on the beach with your family. And like all these guys, all of them are sponsored by the CIA, aka your tax dollars, my tax dollars, and the hidden investments that they have that, we're not aware of, or hidden gold that they found and they don't tell us about. But like any good CIA campaign, they're funding these people's research, but all of them are filled with disinformation to cover the truth. That's what they do, right? They'll give you some truth, and then they'll write something that will make you be like, oh, and you write off everything they did. So all these guys wrote books, all these hypnotists and psychologists, and they were instructed, to write the true things and then also write false things, right? So MPD. Now this is now recently known as dissociative identity disorder, like amnesia, fugue state. All these things are like when a person is seemingly in control of their actions and later they cannot recall those actions. Virtually everyone has the ability to experience dissociative states. What do you mean by that? Well, like when we're driving on autopilot. I don't drive I walk to work, but I'm sure many of you drive or do things, and you realize you pull in your driveway and you're like, holy crap, I don't remember any of that drive, like, or whatever you just get on autopilot, whatever it is, chores, whatever you do, you're done. You're like, geez, I couldn't tell you one thing that happened on that trip. Well, that's exactly what this kind of phenomenon is for the people that they focus on doing this to. They know they did it. They remember they remember something happened, or they're here, so they must have walked or whatever, but it didn't. They don't remember it. So the most severe of this disorder is almost always caused by psychological trauma. Experiences so severe that it cannot be integrated in the core of the personality. So usually from like horrific abuses from parents or adults, like extreme sadism, painful torture, experience death before the parents, before the age of 10. All these things help you. Your brain is such an amazing thing. It blocks it off, right? Like it just stop it. Your memories and personality form around that. It walls off that memory. And think how many superstars or celebrities that we know does this stuff happen to? They are always having these traumatic deaths of family when they're young, all these things like that, because they're easier to control. So normal human reaction, fight or flight, right? I am a flight guy. One time when I was in Philadelphia, when I used to do my heroin days, it was like 4th of July and I'm sick. I'm just trying to get my dope. And these young teenagers who are the drug dealers on the corner have like those fireworks that shoot, and like they're like, they would burn you if you got hit. And I remember I got it and they were like chasing me because they're bored. And I did not stay and fight. I ran probably faster than Usain Bolt ran, right? I was flying, dude. But anyway, so fight or flight. Children lack this ability totally. And the human brain, like I said, it's the most advanced computer. God made such a resilient organ that our elite technocrats are trying to replicate, but they'll never be able to replicate. So it allows the child to either flee from it. The child can't fight or flee, right? They flight or fight. They don't have that ability. They freeze. So instead, they build this virtual wall in their brain around these traumatic events and around that experience. So what that does is it creates like an alternative personality to deal with the abuse. That makes sense, right? The horrible thing happens to a little kid. They can't process this. The brain is so strong, it realizes it would break this psyche of this kid if this like got absorbed. So they wall it off and probably left to be dealt with later, or it's demons that people bring out and drugs and alcohol, all those things like that. So there is like vocal disorder or disagreement about the existence of this disorder. And most that disagree about the dissociative disorder tend to be psychologists or psychiatrists that often find themselves being funded by CIA payroll, which is shocking. I'm sure totally you would never guess that would happen. So helped the one time in 2001, they did this study of MPD, multiple personality disorder, to help resolve the dispute, to prove that these people are not faking alter egos. And we've all seen like TV shows where people have like, or what's the big one? Glass and those ones. M. Night Shyamalan actually went to my recovery house with M. Night Shyamalan, his wife's brother, and he would get his driver to drive him around. But anyway, so they wanted to resolve the dispute. So the study was comparing people's brain waves from those affected, people that say they have MPD, versus actors that are acting out that they have MPD. And there's distinct brain patterns that happen to people that have, like the actors, they act just like they've got multiple personalities, but their brain waves don't change. Unlike the people that actually have it, their brain waves do change. So this proves that people are able to create fractured different personalities to wall off trauma. So how does this like all relate? So mind control is first enhancing an unwitting subject natural ability to disassociate. So they're forcing this to happen, whether it's they're forcing this, creating these multiple personalities. And then they control these created personalities in these dissociative states. So does this happen naturally? Absolutely, it happens naturally. People face trauma all the time. I told you also about like the autopilot of the brain. Like it happens to you and me, but to what degree? And these people are at the nth degree. They are further enhanced or whatever you want to call it than anybody else. So the best time to do it is during like childhood years. So now the next question. So we've like assumed we can, I think all you guys that are listening, that's not too hard for us to believe, but anyone that's not, this proves in my mind that this is a possible phenomenon. This happens. So the next question is, okay, this could happen. Is the CIA capable, these government or capable of doing these horrible things to children? Well, let's see their track record, right? They have a great history of sponsoring assassinations. Civilian massacres, doesn't bother them. Violent coups, doesn't. I told you about Guatemala, where 2 million people got killed out of a population of 4 million, or maybe it was like 800,000 out of 2 million. So still huge. I mean, did they care? No, they didn't care. They didn't care at all. Blackmail, prostitution, Operation Midnight Climax, countless other abhorrent crimes. So yeah, I would say that does the line stop at kids for them? Probably not. I don't see that being too big of an issue for them at all. So the final big question is, once you create this dissociative state, can it be controlled? And George Estabooks, who kind of started the work on it in 1943, he was convinced that was the case. Once the core personality had been split, it was possible to control one or more of the alter personalities without the primary personality being aware of these split personalities. So what can you do with this? But you can create super spies who are not even aware. Their split personality is going to follow orders to a T. They can be fed info, never give it up, because as long as that prime consciousness, like they don't activate the one that has the information, they're never going to spill it. They'll act like they have no idea because they don't have any idea. Hypnotism also causes the same results as like emotional shock. And George Estabrook said that children are notoriously easy to hypnotize as research subjects. Continuing his work was this guy, Paul Vidier, Brainwashing and the Cult. Both did not use the term mind control, which I found interesting. They avoided that term and used brainwashing, all these things. I just found that like interesting. They didn't, that term didn't exist in our vocabulary at this point. And Verdier explained that by circumventing the normal inhibiting response of the cerebral cortex, individuals' voluntary conscious of self-control will be passed or short-circuited. So you do certain things, their like brain's normal reaction, you could go around it and overpower it. And it's called a cortical block. So this can be done by alcohol, euphoric drugs, LSD, hallucinogens, isolation, solitary confinement. And the most dramatic in the arsenal was hypnotism, all of which have been studied extensively by the CIA. I mean, we have done so many shows, and I'm sure in your own research, euphoric drugs, check, LSD on prisoners, on unwilling participants, solitary confinement, you got it. Electroshock therapy, did that. They did everything. And the best to create the one that lasted the longest was to subject victim to profound and deep emotional states: fear, shock, anxiety, and of course, pain. And we know all of these things were studied, millions of dollars were studied on prisoners of war, American military, college kids, all these things, all in this study of like MK Ultra and the ability to fracture somebody's psyche and their mind to create dual personalities. And I know you guys all know that, and it's nothing like new, but that was the best explanation I've ever heard. Like scientifically, it removed the thought of my brain like science fiction. And what's even funnier is George Estabrooks and a lot of these guys, they literally thought that, you know, the CIA was funding them for benevolent purposes. They thought, we could really help humanity if we could break them out of maybe being violent or being sad or whatever it is. They thought this was going to be a great thing for the human population. And I think that's really important because you see so many doctors that get involved with the CIA and get funded. And some of them, are they evil? Yeah, absolutely they're evil. But a lot of them, they're lied to them. In my mind, they're saying, hey, we're going to give you tons of money to study this. This could be used. And just like so many movies, like they create a new technology, the person creating it, they don't want it to be used as a weapon of war. They think it's going to be used for peace. But that military industrial complex is so strong. It comes in, swipes it out, and any beginning intentions gone. So I said, okay, the vulnerability of children to dissociative states is brought on by trauma. And one of the reasons the CIA and intelligence agencies play key roles in the creating of mainstream satanic groups, cults. So the CIA has created every cult probably that's ever existed. And what do? They deny the existence of them constantly. They make fun of satanic panic. Right? They make fun, they poke, they say, oh, how ridiculous is that? That doesn't exist. That doesn't exist. And all these cults and satanic groups have all been intelligence fronts for mind control operations. Verdier said death threats are used as a basic tool of brainwashing for communists. So again, these scientists that are funded, they're communists. We need to try it on them. They're going to do it to us. They're evil. They're evil. So obviously what they learned was if you just keep threatening people and no action, humans are resilient. They're going to adapt and say, okay, this is all talk. So what they would do with these POWs and communists they caught, they would casually execute one of the prisoners in front of the others to remind them when they threaten them, it could be them. Again, this causes you're fracturing the brain to protect itself. And obviously that did not just stop with commies, right? So I don't know how, I know that this is going to get me kicked off YouTube. So SRA, we all know what that is. They talked a lot about children, talk about death threats to them and to family, or forcing the children to take part and witness these horrible things. And a tremendous amount of activity by the CIA and deep state, or whatever you want to call it, is trying to disprove and discredit that brainwashing, and all these things occur. So I know this has been talked about before, but maybe it's the first time you've heard of it. So there's this group, False Memory Syndrome Foundation. Right off the bat, why would a foundation in this Me Too culture be created to protect accused rapists? Well, the CIA funded psychiatrists and accused convicted Schmido person enjoys little ones. They funded this group. It was called the False Memory Syndrome, and basically they attempt to lay blame on virtually all child abuse accusations on overzealous therapists and parents. Oh, satanic parent! That mom is crazy. She's saying that her teacher is doing this to her. And ironically enough, they were called the Eberleys. That was the psychiatrist and a convicted, you know what. We're also known by the LA police as distributors of child videos. Media, of course, ignores this tidbit when mentioning this well-known couple, and they would come into any big case and just demolish the kids. Demolish. Think of how heartless you have to be to come to a child who's suffered and to just destroy their testimony. And this is not this is good information, Tritonic, but I can't read because I'm trying to go fast, but I'm going to read these comments later. So anybody who have comments, leave them. I always read them all. So, but thank you, dude. So this is not a new phenomenon, right? Did this just start? No, this isn't start. And this is so important too. Sigmund Freud, over 100 years ago, recognized that ritual schmooze was likely a primary cause of psychological problems that he observed. And Sigmund Freud was a nut job. I mean, smoking or snorting mad cocaine. I guess good for him. You know, if you can do it, dude, and you can live a great life, I mean, all power to you. I was homeless and struggling, but if you can do it, hey, who am I to judge? So he commented on the similarities between what his patients told him, and this is 100 years ago, and the accounts of witchcraft confessions of the 16th century. Why did the devil who took possession of the poor things invariably abuse them sexually in a loathsome manner? Why are their confessions under torture so like the communications made by my patients in psychological treatment? I think that's an awesome quote. Like, Freud recognized that there were similarities between because the witch hunts weren't just in America. I don't know if you guys know, they were all over Europe at the time. And it's just funny that he noticed that. And it also adds credence to this. There's this religion that exists in the upper echelons of society that has been around for forever, right? And I know that that's like everyone's favorite. It's like a conspiracy candy. And I get that. Yeah, I love that stuff too. But I've never, it's all speculation. But just his comment, somebody that's not a truther or whatever you want to call it, guy who's probably, his nephew was Edward Bernays. But it's just interesting that he made that connection. So it's guy with the pitchfork and thingies. These kind of cults have been documented in Europe and America as far back as the 1600s. But children's claims are often so outlandish and removed from what we accept as normal, it's written off by police, by therapists, by whoever you want to, whoever, it's written off. In a 2000 report, UK concluded that SRA was real and actual abuse. There's this lady, Valerie Sinison. She had 126 patients. She was an author. 46 of her patients said they witnessed I'm making a mark across my neck, of children and adults with group of people, over 300 people there. Some children are born, and her, like, she's a therapist, so she's not like some crackpot, are born with the purpose of strictly abuse. They're not registered. They don't have a social security number. And this is not just in third world countries. This happens in the US as well. And we have tons of examples, like Oprah's buddy, John of God, who was impregnating women, chaining them in basements and forcing them to have birth. There's also photos of children with horrific injuries, remains of animals, innards, all these things. Oh God, this word. All right. little kid. I feel like I should be doing like that, like what's that? Not categories when you act out stuff, but not everyone's watching. You know, the Lado Chrissy. Okay, you got it. But change that L to a P. So in Brussels. Brussels. But anyway, Mark Dutrow. I never heard of him. Have you heard of Mark Dutrow? He was convicted with his wife in 1989 for rape and violent abuse of 5 girls, 11 years old. 11. He's a key player in this international child ring, kidnapping, sadistic torture, all these horrible things. He gets sentenced to 13 years for 5 girls he did this to. How much time does he serve? 3. He serves 3 years. QAnon shaman is serving 4 years. This guy was literally kidnapping people and he got 3 years. Man Who Freedom was a guy named Justice Mcgowan, and he was awarded this prestigious appointment to serve as the judge at the Euro Court of the Justice at The Hague. Wow, it must be because he was such an honest, good judge. Shortly after his release, after Mark Dutrow's release, more young girls start disappearing near his homes. He's technically unemployed because who would hire somebody with that kind of background? He's on government benefits and food stamps of their sort. He has 6 houses. He has nice cars. He lives lavishly. He has 6 houses. That's pretty weird, right? They must be getting a lot of money from their government. Income was obviously from trading in this realm of degeneracy, debauchery, sadism. Many of his houses all appear vacant as well. He liked to rollerblade in all of them. That's what he was doing, except that they were used as imprisonment centers with underground jail cells. And strangely, authorities, they knew about this stuff. They never acted on the info. They claim, no, we're not. We were just incompetent. We didn't look the other way. We were just purely incompetent. Like, think how gross that is, dude. How disgusting. And police searched the houses on 3 occasions. On 2 of the visits, 2 missing girls that were missing from the community were there in horrible conditions in the jail cells in the basement. Police even heard children's voices in Mark Dutrow's basement, but would not go downstairs. Maybe he was playing a movie in their mind. I mean, truly horrible. Like, how do you live with yourself? 4 years later, he's rearrested with his elementary school teaching wife with a policeman and a politically connected politician, a nightclub owner. 2 days later, they search his home again. They found a soundproof dungeon. Wonder what people are using those for. I'm sure it's for nothing bad. Police ignored this tip for 3 years. Neighbors were seeing him build something in his house, bringing equipment down, and all these things like that. Think how many people went missing in 3 years. Another informant told police it was $3 to $5K per person. The police even had a videotape of this dungeon being constructed. The final search, 2 14-year-old girls chained, starved. You understand, videos, 300 tapes were taken in by police. 300. They dug up bodies, 2 8-year-olds at another home of his. Another one was kept, just tons, all in videotape. Horrible, horrible, horrible stuff. You understand. I mean, these people, videos and anything else sadistic. Found another corpse of an accomplice of his buried alive. 2 more buried under concrete. The public demanded to know. They dubbed him the Belgian Beast. And ministry is sitting on tons of video proof. They even discovered the motorcycle that was used in this assassination of a politician that was an honest politician. They have an honest prosecutor on the case. Murder, all this stuff remains unsolved. They are talking to all these accomplices. They're confessing, like organizing these huge sex parties in Belgian chateaus. I love that word, chateaus. In attendance were government officials, law enforcement, European commissioner, system that we all know this. This is nothing new. It was all used for blackmail. Hey, come to this party, you big loser that you somehow got in position of power. Oh, you never got laid before? Well, here we go. We got someone for you now. And 23 suspects, 9 of them cops, were detained and questioned for their part. Of course, the next judge gets dismissed by Belgian Supreme Court because he was doing too good of a job. He was probably trying to honestly prosecute the case. He was able to save 2 children that were in a secret dungeon, and they arrested 3 men before they moved the case to another magistrate. They just kept moving it around. Another lady who was Regina Lauf, she was a witness and a victim. She was victimized by the ring, her parents, and her grandmother. And we're going to get to this commonality later on, but it's always it's in families, dude. It's in these families, and they pass it down because they select these people for this sick reason. Her reputation destroyed. The media killed her. They just ripped her apart. You guys can imagine what they said. Called her a nut job, called her crazy, called her deranged, psych person, all these things. They ruined her reputation for her just standing up and telling the truth. And this was an awesome part. In October of 96, 350,000 Belgian citizens took to the streets to protest, demanding reform in the corrupt system. What happened? Nothing. More bombshells. Another ring running parallel with Dutrow was been found out. Bodies, another one convicted of many counts of child rape, and he's committed to the psych ward, released in 6 weeks. Regardless, as May 2002, 6 years since Dutrow was arrested, the trial had yet to begun. 6 years. What are they doing? Clearly, they don't want to prosecute. Just like our Ghislaine case, where there's so much weird stuff not happening. It's the same thing, dude. It's the same thing. And you think anything's changed because the internet's grown? No. Look what this format that I'm on right now. This is probably the last show we're going to be able to do on here because they quiet it. 6,000 different hairs were found in Dutrow's basements. Prosecutor said there was no need to test the hairs because no one else entered. They were all from the kids. Bodies were too decomposed to do a DNA analysis. Another lead brought that to that guy who was buried under the concrete, and he was tied with this Abraxas organization. Its high priestess. It was another devil horns cult that used young girls. Does it just start does it stop in Belgium? No. Latvia, same thing. 2,000 children. Country's prime minister, justice minister, director of state of revenue, army, law enforcement officers, discrediting campaigns saying the investigator was a KGB spy, and he's trying to bring down Latvia. The commies, always trying to bring down these hardworking capitalists. Portugal, same thing. Photographs had a senator with young boys. It was going on for 20 years. It was an orphanage, kind of like our Franklin scandal. 20 years of evidence was sent to the police when it started. Nothing. They didn't do anything. The police denied they had any evidence. Then they had to admit that they did because someone whistle blew. 20 years they allowed this to go on. Scotland the people wanted to unseal records that were about this horrible ring again. How 16 children were killed. He was a teacher. Then he, of course, kills himself, which is a common theme we're going to keep seeing. Links to senior politicians, lawyers, was a Freemason. Now, why would they seal the court documents for 100 years? This was in 2003. They said to protect the children. They've been through enough. Let's keep this stuff. No, they don't need to relive this. And it goes on and on and on. 1,700 people investigating in Italy. And these things, you know, I'm not going to get like graphic. You understand how disgusting the videos are that they make. Anything that your mind could go to, they did. So that was a big thing. Snuff films. Is this urban legend? Is this phrase was coined during the Manson case because Manson had films of brutal things all in his his compound. This was even crazier. In the 70s in Mexico, there were still slave auctions of young boys to be taken, horrible things, and videoed, and they would sell the video. UK boys stolen from Eastern Europe and brought to London for these events. It was everywhere. It's literally everywhere. They sent CIs. They've realized that these videos were made, 5,000 each, sold in the US. And just all these people, I don't want to kill this point, but it happened in Germany. 5,000 people were arrested 5,000 people were attempting to purchase these disgusting videos. 5,000. French, 250 people arrested. All these people, were they just like, it's $5,000 a video, pretty expensive, right? Even especially in 2000, before inflation hit. And these were married professionals. Any one of them that maybe was going to talk, they would always kill themselves or die of a sudden illness. I'm sure that was coincidence, not a conspiracy. This was Dutrow's quote. People want to, this is a badass quote, so listen. So if anyone's just checking in, it's the murderer or a sadistic dude. People want to believe that I am at the center of everything. They are mistaken. I did things of which I was not the driving force. I was used as an instrument by others who were themselves used as instruments by others. Powerful, right? Super powerful. Let me take a quick drink here. So Wonderland, this was this huge case. 1998, it was this sinister network. 22 states of the United States had people ties to it. 47 foreign countries, coordinated raids all over at the same time. It was named Wonderland because Lewis Carroll of Alice in Wonderland, he was known to have a predilection for underage children. He's like the patron saint of these people around the globe. Like he would have photos of them costumed in suggestive poses. The Alice from Alice in Wonderland, who's written about, she was, 12-year-old kid. He was banned from their home. He was like a family friend. But they do these because the internet, they have these live things all over the internet with kids. Of these 47 countries and 200 states, 107 people were only arrested. 107. It was global. And it's totally brutal stuff. It was ignored by the press. It originated in the US, over 100,000 photographs, followed by tons of suicides. Air Force pilot, microbiologist, all these guys that were caught doing this, sentenced to 12 to 30 months. 12, so a year to 2 years, maybe 3 at most. Just crazy. The Orchid Club, this was another one. It was the same thing, like live feeds. They would have summits to all meet each other on significant occult holidays. Same thing with the tapes. The many of the groups, these people, besides Wonderland, all these people, they're making millions of dollars. Like some of these groups, think of like a YouTube channel just for this stuff, like 75,000 subscribers. Stories never in the media. Now, why wouldn't they be in the media? Well, we remember in ABC how they found out about, that lady tried to publish that story and they quashed it about Prince Andrew and all that stuff. These groups, when they get caught, they have addresses because they're mailing them stuff. They have credit card info. They have all the information police would need to arrest them. They don't get arrested. When I was using drugs, I was using a credit card I found. They had a drawing of me. I don't even know. They found where I lived. I moved like 3 times at that time. They still found me, but they can't stop these guys. Sorry, it's just very frustrating, right? It's sad. It's just crazy. And so these groups, they have been growing rapidly, and the U.S. has always been friendly to it. 78, a federal statute was passed. It was illegal to produce and sell child's, but no restrictions on possession or trade. It's okay if you had it. It's okay if you trade it, but you can't sell it. In 84, they forbade trade, so nothing can change hands, but possession remained legal. Isn't that crazy? Possession remained legal. And as recent as 90, private possession was legal in 44 of the 50 states. In 99, the government ruled it cannot prohibit computer-generated sexual images that appear to be of children. So that means that you couldn't prosecute these cases because it could be a virtual kid because of the internet. And so you find somebody's computer has thousands of these images. No, they're all virtual. They're not real. Well, most of these kids are missing. And how do you prove that that's a real person as opposed to a virtual thing? Right. And it also doesn't help because the FBI doesn't keep track of the amount of missing kids in the country. You know, why wouldn't they do that? Why wouldn't they do that? In 1990, child, you know what, was a $3 billion industry, largest segment of movie making in the US. That literally grossed 2 times that of Disney. And they would use like Disney packaging to make it discreet. The first person to benefit from this virtual law was Patrick Naughton. He's an exec with none other than the Walt Disney Company. He ran their websites. He convicted one day before the new virtual law. He was released within hours on $100,000 bail, despite him being convicted of possessing actual child, right? This set the precedent for all 50 states. It was a conservative court, no less. This virtual law, you know, if you can't prove it's a kid or it's computer generated, it was a defense of free speech. Well, you know that they love guarding our free speech. Very important to them, our free speech. Missing children. Some 200,000 kids go missing a year. And some people say that's grossly inflated. They say it's very rare. And like I just said, it's hard to know because the FBI, the compiler of crime statistics, doesn't bother to keep track. Now, why would the FBI not keep track? Do they not want to know? Do they not want the public to know? From 63 to 88, child cases rose from 150,000 to 2 million. 90% of the teen prison populations are victims of abuse. Woody Allen, everyone's favorite person, right? Woody Allen. All attention's focused on that romance with his whatever. They ignored him inappropriately touching his 7-year-old adopted daughter. And the state of Connecticut decided not to prosecute those charges to spare the child from any further trauma. And you guys all know, like, this gradualism that's occurred in our entertainment industry, like, it's trying to sexualize more and more, like this degeneracy and debauchery. And like Disney, it has these young kids, and all this stuff is filled with this disgusting stuff, like schoolgirl things, you know, all these young kids, these fantasies that are created and massaged by this propaganda that they're created. Which brings this guy named Greg Dark. He made all these occult tinged, disgusting videos, child videos, all this stuff like that with a girl when she was 13. He changed his ways, right? So he's working in the mainstream. He's creating music videos for Britney Spears, Mandy Moore, Leslie Carter, who was the Backstreet Boys. He's raised by a Satanist father who loved Aleister Crowley, loved black magic books. And it's just, this is the guy that's creating these videos, somebody who shouldn't be allowed in public, let alone on the street, creating videos that are consumed by little kids. What do you think that does? A little kid sees this stuff. Like, think how much information these kids get on a daily basis, or on a, like, the entertainment they consume. Like, they know more and more with social media and TikTok. There is no regulation to stop them from seeing this because they don't want regulation on it. That's the goal. That's the goal, is to bring this level of degeneracy to the world. And think, like, just what we see on Twitter or on Facebook. I mean, there's no, like, self-respect. People display their bodies like it's nothing. When back in the day, you couldn't even have your shoulders showing. Like, this is a goal, guys. This is their plan. And that's why I'm such an advocate of, like, marriage and being an honest and, like, truthful, faithful person, because that is what they want us to be, is to be all disgusting. I don't know what other word to use better than that. Britney Spears also, she was 13 and her whole family would walk around her house naked. She said they were earthy people. You think that's good for a family to do that? No, it's not. There was an order or in 1990 a law lowering age of consent to 12 with the Dutch. And they published these articles. Think about the articles they publish today. They trying to have sex scenes in kids' books in the schools. Why would that be good? They're trying to teach sex ed classes younger and younger to these kids. Why? Why are you teaching them that? They have no reason to know that. They shouldn't know that. They're not adults. They are kids. They should be kids. But yet they push and they say, oh, it's puritanical to tell kids not to do this stuff. Oh, what are you, some crazy Christian? Right? It's insane. It's insane. This guy, John Money, professor at Hopkins, of course, our wonderful, wonderful collegiate system. He said, this was his quote, generally, totally, one sec, guys. Sorry, one sec. Sorry, Liv Allen's dad's here, so he'll be hearing me talk here. But he was a professor. He had this quote: "Totally mutual sex between adult men and young boys is great." A professor at Johns Hopkins, insane. Let me see. All these professors, though, Indiana University professor, children are sexual at birth. He was also a follower of Crowley. 600,000 child pros, you know the word, in US and Canada are generating $5 billion a year. $5 billion. They make up boys make up 51% of it. And the FBI, they could stop this, but they're more interested in stopping the insurrection and grandmas that were at DC than taking a second look at this, right? The younger the children are, the more popular. There was this landmark study done by the University of Penn social work in 2001. It was ignored by the US. You want to know why it was ignored? Because it came out on 9/10/2001. But it basically argued that globalization, internationalization led to raise of child videos along with child sex tourism, and 20% of the children were trafficked nationally. There's a variety of false identity papers and cases of arrest, drugs, all these things like that. 10% of the children, they're from like third world countries, 30,000 per one person. Like, this is a huge industry. 1.2 million children went missing in like 2003, $10 billion. So we have done there's so much evidence, like beyond evidence. The CIA is in charge of the drug network, right? They fund the cartels, they fund the mafia, they created the mafia. So that's a huge $1 trillion a year industry. So now with inflation, this book, like I said, was written 20 years ago. This is a $1 billion industry. One would assume that they probably dabble in this as well, because how else are they going to fund making their technocratic world? Just crazy. So how deep does this go? Craig Spence, he's this guy. This was a crazy story. Craig Spence. Anybody go look Craig up. He's a behind the scenes Republican power broker guy. And he operates this callboy ring, supplying kids to both political parties. That's not an R versus D thing. Visiting dignitaries, 200 clients, military officials, business people, lawyers, bankers, media, late night tours of the White House. I'm sure we've all heard about that story. It was cleared by Secret Service guards who moonlighted as bodyguard at his parties. He hinted tours that were arranged by Vice President Bush. And so Craig, where did he get all this experience with? He's involved in cover and ops in Vietnam, Japan, Central America, the Middle East. This was his quote: "If a foreign diplomat wants a companion, the State Department provides. They have a special fund set up for that." CIA blackmail ops, his mansion. He was like the Epstein before Epstein in the 80s. He had surveillance everywhere. And those cameras probably were horrible, I imagine. But two-way mirrors, drugs, all this stuff. And how did he get the drugs? Well, he was bringing it in from El Salvador. And despite this being a Republican scandal, New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, all ignored. Paper trail quickly covered up. 20,000 documents sealed, gag order. Spence, the great man that he was, did he go to trial? Did he blow the whistle on it? No. He was found dead 5 months after the story broke, and that time largely forgotten. This was his quote. To his friend, he wrote, "I may be disappearing soon. It will be sudden. It may appear to be a suicide, but it won't be." Police refused to comment on the cause of his death. On the bathroom mirror he was at the Ritz Hotel. He scrawled this on the mirror. "Chief, consider this my resignation, effective immediately. You can't ask others to make a sacrifice if you are not ready to do the same. Life is duty. God bless America." And I'm saluting for people listening. This ring had his call boy thing, had close ties to the mortuary business, which would be convenient, as you can imagine why. He also implicated was a Congressman, Barney Frank, who ran his house was base of operations. His son was, he had a lover. It went into the military this by a senior Pentagon budget analyst. And we're not going to, this was before Franklin, I believe, before the Franklin scandal. And we're not going to get into that because I did a few episodes and there's lots of info, but you guys know it was a huge thing ran by this Larry King guy. Victims get put into prison for perjury. The victims of Larry King and his group of people, the victims get committed for perjury and serve more time than Larry King did, who just gets put into jail for defrauding investors. And the lead prosecutor, who was doing a good job, he made a call, "I'm about to bring it down. I have the evidence to bring everything down." Well, him and his son on the way home from the All-Star game, their plane gets blown out of the sky. I say it gets blown out of the sky because when a plane crashes, if it truly just fell out of the sky, it would land, you would have the plane and it would glide, it'd be broken apart. There was debris from the plane for over 3 miles, which means it broke up because it got blown up out of the sky. Just crazy. Also with that, the Franklin scandal. So I read the book by John DeCamp, and John was a senator, and I took him as a good guy, and I still hope he was a good guy, but he references William Colby, and William Colby was the director of the CIA. William Colby was the one that did the investigation on the plane crash. And he said, it's too hard to tell what happened to it. But William Colby, began his career in the OSS. If he's the director of the CIA during Operation Gladio, the Phoenix program, which was a campaign of assassination, torture, terror, it killed over 20,000 Vietnamese. How good of a guy could he be, right? The top aide was John DeCamp, who was in Vietnam. So again, if this guy's writing the books for William, he wrote the book, how honest is he really? He's working together, killing 20,000 Vietnamese soldiers through torture, terror, assassination, but now he wants to tell the truth and help bring this story out. I don't believe that in any way. So everything he says, I take with a grain of salt. We've read John Bristol, my man, says he was not a good guy. I am in good company then. But Paul Bonacci, he became director of CIA. Nixon replaced him with George Bush. So again, if John agrees with me, that's all I need to know, dude, because he's not a good guy. Directors of CIA are not good people. Paul Bonacci, this guy that had horrible stuff happen to him, was awarded $1 million in a civil court case, nothing for what the trauma he went through. Larry King and his friends never charged for the sadistic stuff that they did. Never. They were charged for defrauding people of millions, but that's it. So one more, I need a drink of water. So after George and I have a good authority, DeCamp was likely MKu1tr4 and I can't say that word. Thank you. Guys, go check out We've Read the Documents if you haven't. He's been on the show a bunch, but John is a very knowledgeable guy. So at the Paul Bonacci trial, the guy that was a victim in this Larry King and Franklin cover-up, a guy comes up named Michael Aquino. And Michael Aquino, odd man, and I've been talking about him. He was identified as a key player in a nationwide ring. Aquino was associate of King, of course, because birds of a feather flock together. He and Bonacci witnessed a transfer of suitcases full of cash and bonds between Aquino and Larry King. Aquino was also part of the Contra gun scandal, which was a cocaine running trafficking op run by George Bush out of an Air Force base all over the country. But, they were bringing the cocaine into America, causing the crack epidemic in South Central Los Angeles. And they were using that to make money for the CIA. And then they were also using that money with Reagan to fund the rebel soldiers that were fighting communism in Nicaragua. Also, it was funny. Aquino was at this Offutt Air Force Base. It's near Omaha. George Bush also decided to hang out there on the afternoon of September 11th. Also, he ordered the abduction of a Iowa paperboy. Oh man, now this story was crazy. Presidio. So go look up Presidio. Presidio Child Development Center. It's run by the U.S. Army in San Francisco. It's a child development center. These rumors started in around 86 about a 3-year-old boy, you can imagine, by his teacher, Mr. Gary. It took the Army a month to notify the parents of other children who were also in Mr. Gary's class. They waited a month. They wanted to see how this panned out. Within a year, 60 victims, all between the ages of 3 and 7. More children abused even after the investigation began. The center remained open a year after that first case. A year. Children were told stories about being taken away from the center off campus, going to private people's homes. Things that you don't even want to hear, you can imagine. They would be threatened with violence. There was numerous people, not just Mr. Gary, that was arrested. They charged him with one charge. That's it. It was dismissed a few months later, and he was fine. After 70 victims, he got one charge. They dropped the case. FBI never interviewed victims. Even a doctor confirmed all of the abuse. Nothing ever happened, ever. One child positively identified Aquino and his wife Lilith, which is funny. Her name is Lilith because Lilith in I don't know if it's the Kabbalah or whatever it is. She's like this. She was God's first creation. She's like a succubus character, but that was Aquino's wife's name. Whether that was really her name, I don't know. But it was described the inside of their house. It's this dark satanic interior. Search warrants served all in the house. There's numerous videos, photos, cassette tapes with names and addresses all in the house. There's another soundproof room. He's probably recording. He likes the Beatles. He's got a band. He's rocking. He needs a quiet. Neither charged for a crime. And Aquino, so after that, Aquino, he was on Oprah. He was on freaking Oprah, and he's got the crazy eyebrows. And I don't think it was on Oprah they asked him, but he's been asked, have you abused kids? And he'll say, no, I was never charged. I was never charged. That's proof. It's just the false memory of kids saying this stuff. A month after the raid in Presidio, a fire destroyed the building next to the daycare. And then 3 weeks later, fire struck again on the daycare center. ATF said the fires were arson. Did anyone investigate that? No, they didn't investigate that. 88 Aquino files there's Aquino's file. Aquino sued then the Army to remove these cases out of him being in court. And the court denied him, saying there was probable cause that Aquino did do these things, but still no charges were brought against him. So the court wouldn't even remove the cases because he did them, but they just didn't charge him. Attorney handling the case was Joseph Rusanelio. He's identified by Gary Webb, who was the reporter that broke the Iran-Contra scandal, as a key player in the cocaine smuggling operation of that whole thing. So I'm sure he's an honest attorney, just like every attorney. Aquino in '89 was identified by 5 children in 3 different cities. Years earlier, there was another daycare center ran by the military. the same allegations, children taken to churches, and Aquino was at these church events. Presidio also had satanic graffiti, altars, artifacts, stuff that's used in rituals, all on the army base. Why? Why would an army base have an altar that is not a Christian altar? Like this, this is what caused like the satanic panic of the 80s and 90s. And these people were mocked. They were mocked. By 1987, the Army received child abuse at 15 daycare centers, elementary schools, 2 at Air Force, along in Panama, DOD Center, with 10 kids infected with AIDS. 10 in Panama. This happened at Fort Dix, Jackson, West Point. Over 9, there, it just keeps happening. Oh, this was huge. Rudy Giuliani, everybody's favorite guy on the right. They all love Rudy. Well, I know a lot of you guys don't, but like boomer conservatives do. And Rudy, so this was happening at Fort Dix. Girl lacerated, you know what? Teacher said she said the teacher hurt her. All this stuff. Feces, all these things, disgusting things, over 950 interviews, like I said. And who led the investigation with that FBI, with the 950 investigations? Rudy Giuliani. He produced 0 federal grand jury indictments. I guess all 950 of those kids, for Mr. Rudy, said just didn't prove enough. He said maybe 1 or 2 of them were abused, but it just wasn't enough for a case. That's our guy. That's our guy that helped cover up 9/11. West Point, same thing. They gave one of the Army staff sergeants killed a 22-month-old kid. What did he get? He got 18 months suspended sentence, which means you don't serve the crime, like your time, or you don't have to like go in. It's your punishment is like pushed off kind of like indefinitely based on how I feel like you're a good person. I'm pretty sure that's what a suspended sentence is. And he got a dishonorable discharge. So basically he got nothing for killing a 22-month-old kid. This was who helped him with that? Giuliani, FBI. They covered it up. Approximately, or appropriately, that building number of that daycare center was the 666 building. And like the Franklin case, civil courts gave compensation. So they needed to give him something because these people could keep talking about this, and they probably had him sign NDAs. The military argued the government cannot be held responsible due to assault exemption, and cannot be held liable for assaults committed by its employees, thus cannot be sued for assault. It awarded 2.7 to 9 kids, and the FBI also said insufficient evidence to pursue. And we're almost done here. I'm going fast. Can you tell how quick I'm talking? I feel like I just drank like 10 cups of coffee. All right, the Mcmartin Preschool. This was a crazy story as well. Case in the 80s. Mainstream media ran cover, as they always do. Alexander Cockburn, perfectly named for the Wall Street Journal, wrote, "Indict the children, jail the parents." That's what he wrote. That is what these people have never changed. The media have never been honest. They are liars. They are in the intelligence pockets. They are the biggest POSs of the world. And that was his quote. "Indict the children, jail the parents." Along with 2 other, along with the military stuff, there was another thing that this was covered up. It was preschools and babysitting services that led these huge rings, covered up by local, state, federal. 350 children were victims of this case. 7 teachers were named, along with 30 non-teachers that were uncharged, even though they were identified. And abuse occurred school, local markets, homes, mortuaries, farms, doctors' offices. Children photographed, and they all talked about drinking a red liquid that made them very sleepy. Animal things. You guys got it. All these horrible things. Adults were dressed in black robes and formed circles around them. If you're saying that these kids are lying, this was in the 80s, so there wasn't horrible stuff on the TV yet. Where are they coming up with this? 350 kids came up with this exact story. What, they planned it? A 5-year-old, they planned this to all say the same story? No, they didn't plan it. And this went on for years. The children were now adults when this finally got to court. And and then the kids that were adults, because this was going on for so long, they weren't allowed to testify at the McMartin hearing. I wonder why. Well, they said statute of limitations, but because obviously an adult is going to add some credence to the McMartin case. But if you have younger victims, they're obviously not going to be aces on the stand. So they had over 100 witnesses. Loads of documentation from doctors, medical reports, anyone who believed the kids, anyone who believed the kids got our normal routine. Oh, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist, false memory syndrome, all these things like that. District Attorney Ira Rayner shockingly drops all charges against 57 defendants 6 days before he removes 2 prosecutors from the case. 3 dozen suspects identified, never indicted at all. Never indicted at all. And the kids that they put on the stand in pre-trial, the attorney to question them, he was brutal. These were kids and he demolished them. These kids that had all these horrible things happen to them. And the guy that's supposed to being the prosecutor or whatever you want to call it is attacking these poor little kids who then just shut down and don't speak. All right, I think this is my last story. We're doing pretty well. We only did 1 hour and 7. We're doing well. Robert Winkler, this guy he ran a babysitting service that was linked to the McMartin case. And he would visit the school, deliver the drugs and rituals. And this one parent, Judy Johnson, she was the first parent to lodge a complaint in the McMartin case. She never got to deliver her testimony. She was, my screen was lagging. She never got to deliver the testimony. She was found dead on her home floor, naked, because of chronic alcoholism the day of her trial. Wow, what are the odds of that? She was never known to be an alcoholic. Media, always running cover, labeled her as a total crank. She had no mental illness. Paul Bynum, he was a former police officer hired by parents of this case as a private investigator. He turns up dead the eve of his scheduled testimony as well. Suicide again. It's more contagious than anything you can imagine, it seems. It just bounces off of people. The children told stories of tunnels and secret rooms. And as always, the mainstream media ran stories. Well, there is no proof that there is no tunnels. So clearly this story is all made up. So the parents hired a PhD archaeologist who even worked on the Indiana Jones movies. And he identified not 1, but 2 tunnel complexes that defied natural explanation. It had access connecting buildings. It was a cavernous room that was exactly what the kids were saying. It was this secret room underground. This evidence was presented before the end of the trial, but never presented by the prosecuting team. So huge evidence that would corroborate your kid's story. They didn't bring it up. I guess they thought it wouldn't work. The children had to take all these horrible things. You guys can imagine. And so after this story, because it was on the news, thousands of children all over the country started stepping forward and telling similar stories. So again, are they making it up? A 5-year-old's watching the news. They say, that sounds like a good idea. I want to be on TV. Let me talk about this. No, that's the odds of that happening are infinitesimal. It would be more of a conspiracy to do that than to have these kids just telling their truth, right? But the kids were even able to describe the smell, the look, the texture, the color of human organs. How would a 7-year-old know that? The trial was a hung jury. And I told you the lawyers destroyed these kids in pre-trial. They verbally abused these kids, and just horrible. All right, this is our last part. Man, I'm impressed how fast I talked. I hope you guys are enjoying it. Frank Fuster and his wife, Ileana, they had been brutally hurting kids in their trusted care of their babysitting service run out of their home. Well, let's go with Frank Fuster's background. 15 years earlier, he killed a fellow motorist in New York City. He was an off-duty police officer, was an eyewitness to this case, and he also had the gun pointed at him but was not killed. He was arrested for 10 years. He murdered somebody, right? That's fair. He was out in less than 4. Not normal. I can tell you that for a fact. That is absolutely not normal, no matter what good behavior you're on. He started receiving psychiatric care in 69. In 82, he starts committing lewd assaults on kids. Second felony. So now in the court systems, if you hit a second felony when you're on parole, you're going back to finish your sentence. Well, he was sentenced to 2 years probation. While on probation, which definitely isn't allowed, him and his wife start a business venture. They start their babysitting service. Probation officer, for a person that's committing lewd acts with children, and probation, you're not allowed to be around kids when you're a felon. Most times, like for certain scenarios, he's definitely not. But his probation officer said, hey, you got to make money, dude. We're capitalists. Go for it. Thanks, John. I appreciate you stopping in. And even though this was violating terms of probation, he had 50 kids under their supervision, 30 reported crimes, violating local zoning laws. He had no proper license to do this. Capitalism, baby. No, we don't want regulation. Regulation is holding us down, libertarians, right? You know, I'm being like facetious. But anyway, he used the name County Walk Babysitting Service, implying it was officially sanctioned service. No issues with the county, even though if you try to put up a goddamn gazebo, you will have county zoning people up your butt faster than you can blink. You try to do anything, zoning people will be at your house. And they didn't care. They didn't care. They had 50 kids. They didn't care. The management company, this was even crazier, was contacted after the news broke. They denied any official links to the Fuster operation. Not surprising, Arvida, which is a subsidiary of the Walt Disney Company, was the company that took zero action against Fuster because Arvida is who was the management company of the apartment complex. As did Dade County, they didn't take any action. Facing imminent arrest because 30 kids are coming forward, Fuster is observed by his neighbors packing boxes into a white van. Parents, as they should be, worried that if evidence was about to be lost, they call police. They say, guys, get over here. This guy's escaping. Police came flying over with guns blazing, everything ready to go. And I'm joking. They didn't do that. They didn't come. The police didn't arrive until the next day. At that point, the house was bleached, cleaned, empty. Fuster was eventually taken into custody with no evidence. More stories came out. Same things as we mentioned before. Rituals, excrements, all this stuff. Photos of them covered in excrements. Again, the drinking of, you guys got it. You understand. He would threaten families. He would scare the kids by, like in daycare, he would decapitate animals in rituals and say, this is what will happen to you. Fuster was also making custom made-to-order videos. He was a self-employed mini blind installer, but he had 6 bank accounts, 20,000 in lump sum deposits weekly. So how does a part-time mini blind installer running a daycare have 6 bank accounts and depositing 20,000 cash lump sum every week? And the kids even said that Ileana, his wife, wore a hypnotizer chain around her neck. That's what they called it. The parents who were speaking out subjected to death threats, dead animals left on their doorstep, obscene messages in the mail. Defense strategy was to hire a, super great lawyer. How he forwarded that, we know how he forwarded that. And he casted all guilty parties, as this was a witch hunt. They love that phrase, a witch hunt. They love it. They love it, to mock you and to make fun of you when probably the witch hunts were actual witches. So it's just funny. That's the expression used when it was actual true. The guy that ran it was this Stuart Coleman, vocal, victims of child abuse laws. Not a good guy. Okay, so take that. He was a horrible guy. He defended people that were prosecuted for this kind of stuff, like in this case. Fuster was convicted on 14 counts brought against him. Children were protected this time from the pretrial treatment, which happened to those Mcmartin kids. He was sentenced to 100 years. So he got, finally some justice. Arvida, the Disney subsidiary, paid $6 million to 7 victims. But there was other people involved with this case, never charged. They identified him, never charged. The other guy that was identified, his wife also ran a babysitting service. So you can imagine how that went. Let's see. So John just talked about this, who was just on the show, the Finders Club. And I'm just going to skip. I don't want to get I'm going to get shut down anyway off YouTube, but same story, right? CIA was involved with the Finders Club. They stopped the examination of it. They caught all these people red-handed with all these things. They had instructions of how to do blackmail, like Keith Raniere from Nexium, all the same stuff we talked about. Kids, they found 8 kids in a van with these 2 guys. They were not clean, all these stuff like that. No one's charged. No one's charged. The kids are returned to their mothers, and the police said no crime, just eccentric people. People that were in the Finders, they were the computer people for the CIA. Like, it was outsourced to them. And so when the CIA was questioned, like, do you work with, you train these people? They're like, oh no, we have no control over that. And they let it go. So that is today's episode, guys. Tomorrow or next week, we're going to pick up with the serial killer. So we're going to get into all these serial killers, what they have in common, what their backgrounds are, and how they're all the same story over and over and over again. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Follow me on Twitter at Conspiracy or JAC. We had more people watching today than we've ever had. So thank you guys for checking in. But the next episode, I think the first one was like a good base, but this part 2 one, like, it is insane. Like, stuff that I never knew about serial killers, how they murder their victims the same way the CIA does, with weapons of opportunity or 22 shots to the head. I forget what they call, like touch wounds or whatever, because you can't identify the bullet. All these things, it's insane, and it's going to just get crazier. So if you want to support the show, I got a Venmo at Conspiracy or JAC, my Patreon. I got another subscriber there. Thank you guys. I'm so appreciative you guys supporting the show. And that's it, guys. So hang in there. Thanks for listening. Keep reading, keep bettering ourselves, pray, and keep learning. All right. I'm Jack Allen. Thanks, everybody.